Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. The name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal employee and proud of it. Uh, I'm coming here and coming to you on Friday, so whatever you see is going to be obsolete and out of date. And it'll be even more out of date because I'm going to talk about North Korea. Why am I talking about North Korea? Because the North Korean nuclear test, which was 9 October. Today, even for me, it's 20 October. You'll probably be seeing this at least 21 October, maybe 23, maybe 6 months from now. I have a tendency to re-show my old shows. So whatever I say today, as I've said before, is going to be totally obsolete. And it's double obsolete because I should have done this show right after the nuclear test. But I'm doing it today because I think it's a really important issue. Why is it important? It's important because out of the axis of evil, not access to son of evil, the axis of evil was Saddam Hussein's Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. Only North Korea actually has nuclear weapons. So even though we went into Iraq, that was in 2003, in fact, North Korea was the most dangerous of the three. And why is North Korea dangerous? I'll give you a little background, and then I'll give you some more background. North Korea goes back to right after World War II. In World War II, Korea was split between the influence of the Russians and the communists, which eventually became North Korea, and the influence of America and the West, which eventually became South Korea. They didn't actually become countries for a few years later. However, they did become spheres of influence. So North Korea, which I am going to try to fix onto the screen, is, let's see if I can get my, North Korea is up here. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit so that I can actually find my cursor. There it is. There's North Korea over here. Here's South Korea over here. And what happened was sphere of influence was set. It was more of a straight line at that time, right after World War II in 1945. In 1950, the communists, which is the Kim Il-sung, who is Kim Jong-il's dad, actually invaded South Korea. And in a lightning attack, the North Koreans actually got all the way down to here, almost to Busan, and almost conquered all of South Korea before we really got our act together and started to resist. We counterattacked and came in over here. I believe that was Incheon, but I could be wrong. And there was a counterattack which was conducted by our greatest Pacific general, General MacArthur at the time. And he broke through the North Korean lines, rolled them up almost to the border of China. Border of China is the Yalu River. The Chinese, Mao Zedong had just taken over China in 1949, although that war had started way back in the 1920s. But 5 years after, he took over China, and his forces got to the Korean border around 49. So 1950 already here, the North Koreans have attacked South Korea. The Americans have counterattacked by sea and basically taken all of South Korea over. And now are way up here, the Chinese attacked with almost 1 million troops. Total disaster. Our forces reacted very, very well, as a matter of fact, but were pushed all the way down almost to this line, which is an armistice line. And at the end of the Korean War, which was 1953, this is our line right here. And America's sphere of influence became the country of South Korea. North Korea became the Kim Il-sung dynasty, and that was basically a satellite of Russia. And I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And as you can see, Russia actually touches North Korea right over here at that little edge. So that's basically what happened in the Korean War. Meanwhile, the Sung dynasty, Kim Il-sung, the dear leader, or the beloved leader, took over and started an incredible personality cult country, not really communist in the classic sense, more of a family feudal dictatorship. And basically created this cult of personality around himself. And he lived until about 10 years ago. Now, fast forward to 1989. 1989 is when the Berlin Wall fell, and the Soviet Empire just started to collapse. So I'm going to give up my mouse over here and actually get it center myself a little bit better. So the wall fell, and that was the beginning of the end of the Soviet Empire. So we have the Kremlin, which really didn't fall until 1991, the Soviet Union. But Eastern Europe split off from the Soviet Union in 1989. That was the fall of the Berlin Wall. Great moment in American history and in world history. Basically, the West winning the Cold War, leaving the United States as the sole superpower. Now, what did that do for North Korea? Well, North Korea was almost completely dependent on Russia. Russia and China, communist China, had split in 1965. Mao Zedong launched his own Maoist revolution in the 60s. There's a terrible internal struggle within China. And of course, Mao Zedong won Mao Zedong, or won communist China again. And there was a terrible kind of an internal crackdown, I guess you might say, in China. And that was itself a reaction from the Soviet Union under Khrushchev, kind of reforming or becoming a little more liberal, which Mao Zedong didn't agree with. That was the Great Cultural Revolution. So there was a split in Russia and China. In fact, there was even a conflict, let's see if I can get to it, between Russia and China along this river over here. There's an island in that river between Russia and China. I'm just going to go back to the picture I had before. And there were actually Chinese and Russian troops killed in a war between each other while the Cold War was going on in 1969. So by 1989, China had become much, much stronger. In the 80s and 90s, China became semi-capitalist, you might say, but still authoritarian, still one party. And China has become an economic superpower and kind of the second power in the world right now. Meanwhile, Russia had not only had Eastern Europe split off from it, but so had parts of what were the Russian Empire before the Soviet Union. And we got Kazakhstan and the Caucasus, the Baltic states, splitting off from Russia itself, including, most importantly, the Ukraine and Belarus. So areas that were inherently Slavic started splitting off from the Soviet Union. So Russia fell apart, and Russia became its own country, still very powerful, with most of the natural gas in all of Europe. And again, today, becoming a power, but not of the rank of the United States. So North Korea was left on its own without a superpower behind it. So what happened was, and I'm going to go to a source. I'm going to say what the source is because I'm no genius. And the source is as unreliable as could be. It's Wikipedia. So so I have a timeline over here of events that have to do with nuclear weapons in North Korea. So what happened in North Korea? In 1989, North Korea had 2 nuclear facilities. One was 5 megawatts, but it was enough to produce a little bit of plutonium. And the other one was built basically to mirror the nuclear facility that was in England, They used some public records that had gotten out, and they had built a 50 megawatt nuclear facility. Both of those appeared to be able to produce plutonium. Now, there's two kinds of atom bombs. There's, of course, a hydrogen bomb, too. And one is used with uranium and highly enriched uranium-235. And the other one is used with plutonium. Now, plutonium is a byproduct of uranium, and usually a byproduct of uranium producing heat that produces electricity. So what plutonium does is plutonium can breed more plutonium. So once you get that going, you got more and more and more. And that's exactly what the North Koreans had in mind. So we were very, very concerned about North Korea getting a plutonium-style atom bomb. So fast forward to 1992. 1992 is the end of the Bush 1 administration. And for the first time, North Korea allows a team of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, people in, including the famous Hans Blix, who was one of the key players in the run-up to the Iraq War. And he was looking into the 5 megawatt reactor at Yongbyon. Now, I didn't locate Yongbyon on my map over here, but I wish I had. And later on, the Secretary of State at the time, who was James Baker, very important Republican, by the way, kind of had an interview, and he said that even in the early 1990s, around 1992, that North Korea had enough material to make one rudimentary nuclear bomb. So 1993, North Korea threatened to withdraw from the NPT. What is the NPT? It's the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And the Non-Proliferation Treaty means that no new countries are going to get nuclear weapons. And Bill Clinton became president. He appointed a negotiator, negotiated with North Korea. And you basically, if you want to withdraw from the NPT says that the International Atomic Energy Agency can go in there and they can inspect all of your nuclear facilities, and that you agree to that. And you agree not to proliferate, in other words, not only create nuclear weapons if you don't already have them, but not to let any nuclear technology or nuclear weapons go to a third party, a third country that doesn't have them, or that includes terrorist groups as well. So it's a pretty good treaty. Almost everybody is a member, with the exception of Pakistan and Israel, both of whom have, or Pakistan is known to have nuclear weapons, and Israel is thought to. And they didn't sign it, so they're not under it, so nobody's preventing them. But North Korea did, and apparently was breaking it. So they had this agreement, and 89 days. You have 90 days to notify that you're getting out of the NPT. The 89th day, North Korea backed off and didn't get out of the NPT, the Non-Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. And 12 October 94, U.S. and North Korea signed an agreed framework. And this agreed framework, North Korea very cleverly agreed to freeze plutonium production in exchange for fuel oil, economic cooperation, and America agreed to put 2 light water nuclear power plants that the output of which could not be used for nuclear weapons. So, and eventually the 2 plants that North Korea had were going to be dismantled and taken away from the country and replaced with all the electricity from these much larger, more modern nuclear power plants that the U.S. was going to build for them. So that was the agreed framework. Now, that's kind of a dirty word nowadays because obviously it didn't work because of a loophole. And that loophole was it forbid the North Koreans from making plutonium, not from making enriching uranium. So, of course, that's exactly what they did. It looked like they were making progress. Even in 1997, spent nuclear fuel rods were encased in steel containers under the inspection of the IEAA. And then in 98, the first of the missile crises happened, with North Korea launching missiles right over the country of Japan. Uh, that was 31 August 98. Now, fast forward again, because I have some time, but not that much, to 2002. Now, 2002, by the way, is the run-up to the Iraq War. So right now, in the course of this, we're complaining about weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Saddam Hussein, threatening to go to war to take those away, and eventually, the following year, actually going to war. And North Korea pokes their little nose into it. 2002, of course, George W. Bush is president. And the first pouring of the light water power plants occurred, but way behind schedule. That's 7 August. Then in October, James Kelly presses the North in suspicion that it's continuing to try to make nuclear weapons. In 16 October, U.S. announces that North Korea admitted that they're actually making a secret nuclear arms program, but that this arms program is based on uranium, not based on plutonium. And of course, the Koreans are saying, you got to continue to build these light water reactors for us because we're not breaking the agreed framework. So it was a cheat. And boy, are we surprised. Communist country actually cheating us. We shouldn't be too surprised because they're liars. And that's exactly what happened. Colin Powell, 20th October, says further aid to North Korea now in doubt. You have to take into account North Korea is having a famine. People are actually starving. Refugees are pouring over the Chinese border because people are eating grass. And in 14 November, George W. Bush declares that oil shipments to North Korea will be the last if North Korea does not agree to put a halt. North Korea immediately starts backing up. They have a tendency to do something positive and the next day rejecting it, or doing something negative and the next day backing off of it. So meanwhile, 11 December 2002, again, this is the run-up to the Iraq War. Scud missiles are found aboard a ship bound for Yemen. And of course, Yemen is on the way to Iraq. So is Saddam Hussein using the North Koreans to try to get Scuds? Maybe, but this aggravated the crisis with North Korea. And then 12 December, North pledges to reactivate nuclear facilities for energy generation. Of course, we all know they're making energy over here, getting ready to make nuclear weapons over there. Then in the 13th to the 22nd, North Korea tells the IEAA, we're going to dismantle your cameras, your eyes and ears over our nuclear program so that we can go ahead and do whatever we want. You won't be able to see. And that's one of the things that Saddam Hussein had done that actually caused the crisis that eventually led to our attack on Iraq. But meanwhile, here is North Korea, much, much closer, even known back in Bush 1 days as probably having enough material to make a nuclear weapon, and yet we're going into Iraq, and we're not doing that much about North Korea. 2003, South Korea asked China to use its influence with North Korea. The IEA passes a resolution demanding that North Korea let the inspectors back in. Very, very paralleling what's going on with Iraq, except that America is not threatening to invade. 10 January, North Korea announces again that it's going to withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which means that they're going to go official. They have nukes. 10 Jan 2003, they announced that they would withdraw. Cabinet-level talks between North and South Korea because everybody's afraid of what they're doing. America is considering a new deployment into South Korea which is North Korea says is threatening. And that's 6 February. Then there's a second missile crisis where North Korea starts lobbing missile after missile over the country of Japan, which is really alarming Japan. Japan is actually looking for anti-missile missiles like Star Wars technology to protect them. 10 March, second missile. 22 March, we go into North Korea because North Korea has nuclear weapons? No, we go into Iraq to try to disarm Saddam Hussein, who is proven later not to have anything. So 18 April, this is while we're invading Iraq, North Korea announced that it is starting to reprocess spent fuel rods, which is the way to make uranium-based nuclear weapons. China begins talks because China is their sponsor now. And here again is a positive. North Korea says they'll scrap their nuclear weapons program if America makes concessions, and then backs up on it 2 weeks later. And not only by 12 May, 2 weeks after they said that they would scrap it if America made concessions, then they say that they're just outrightly scrapping the Korea nuclear free agreement, which is the last agreement after the NPT that says that North Korea can't have nuclear weapons. That's the nuclear-free peninsula. So the six-party talks, the famous six-party talks, we don't want to go head-to-head with North Korea, but we'll go into talks with China, Russia, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, U.S. So those are the six-party talks. 21 November, Imperial, okay. There's North Korea says that they'll freeze their weapons program in return for certain concessions, but that if America doesn't immediately accept, that North Korea is going to withdraw from the third-party talks. And they do. There's a second round of third-party talks in 2004. That's the period when Libya gave up their nuclear weapons and then admitted that North Korea was sending them missile technology and helping them with their nukes. 28 September, North Korea says it's turned 8,000 fuel rods into nuclear weapons. That represents 4 to 13 nukes. They shut down the nuke facility again 1 May 2005, which enables them to pull out more rods to make more nuclear weapons. And then the North-South talks begin. 22 June 05, North Korea demands more food aid from the South. They're starving over there. Of course, the leaders of North Korea are just doing fine, but the people are actually starving. South Korea offers huge amounts of electricity if they'll back off and reduce the tension. North Korea agrees that 19 September, North Korea again says, we're going to give up our nuclear weapons program. 20 September, they say that they won't. You know, all this optimism and then crash. So that happened over and over again. 2006, experts say that North Korea already has 4 to 13 nukes. And then 5 July, there's another missile crisis where 5 and 6 July, North Korea launches missile after missile right over the country of Japan, of course, with the idea that not only can we hit Japan, but we could nuke it. And then, of course, this week between 3 and 9 October, North Korea says we're going to have a nuclear test. And actually, there is a nuclear test. However, it may have been a dud. And then, because it's only 550 kilotons, where nuclear weapons are usually 20,000 kilotons. So it could have been just a 250-pound bomb, like a dirty bomb, but it did release some radioactivity. Then China sends then there's a Security Council resolution against them. And then China sends a delegation, and Kim Il-sung says he's sorry. Okay, my name is Reed Silver, and the name of the show is Fed Pride. Reason it's called Fed Pride, because I'm a federal employee, proud of it.